The rain in Seattle didn't just fall, it hammered. It was a relentless, icy sheet that turned the asphalt of Route 9 into a slick, black mirror. Caleb Miller gripped the steering wheel of his 2008 Ford F-150, his knuckles white against the cracked leather. The heater rattled, blowing lukewarm air that smelled faintly of old oil and wet dog, though he didn't own a dog. At 32, Caleb felt older than his years. His hands were permanently stained with grease that no amount of pumice soap could scrub away, and his lower back carried a dull ache, the badge of honor for a man who spent 12 hours a day bending over engines. He was exhausted. He had just finished a double shift at the garage, followed by an emergency roadside call 2 towns over. All he wanted was to get home to his 6-year-old daughter, Sophie. She was with Mrs. Gable next door, and Caleb hated being late. Then he saw it. Ahead, where the road curved sharply around the cliffside, a guardrail was sheared off. Smoke, blacker than the night, billowed up from the ravine below. Most people would have kept driving. It was dangerous, dark, and the rain was blinding. But Caleb Miller wasn't most people. He slammed on his brakes, the truck fishtailing slightly before coming to a halt on the gravel shoulder. He grabbed his flashlight and a crowbar from under the seat and ran. The car was a twisted wreck of metal, a sleek obsidian sedan that looked like it cost more than Caleb would earn in a lifetime. It was wedged against a thick pine tree, the front end crumpled like paper. Flames were already licking at the undercarriage. Can you hear me?" Caleb shouted, sliding down the muddy embankment. Inside, a woman was slumped over the steering wheel. Even in the chaos, Caleb noticed she didn't look like anyone who belonged in his world. The fabric of her dress shimmered under his flashlight beam. He smashed the driver's side window with a crowbar. The glass shattered into diamonds. The heat was intensifying. He cut her seatbelt, his calloused hands moving with the precision of a surgeon. She was dead weight as he hauled her out, throwing her over his shoulder just as the fuel tank ignited. The explosion threw them forward into the mud. Caleb shielded her body with his own, feeling the searing heat singe the hair on his arms. They were alive. But the storm was worsening, and the nearest hospital was 40 miles back the way he came, across a bridge he knew was flooding. She was shivering violently, her lips turning blue. Hypothermia was setting in. He made a choice. He carried her to his truck, blasted the heater, and drove the remaining 5 miles to his home, a small, drafty, converted, glorious garage with a living space upstairs. He didn't know her name. He didn't know she was one of the most powerful women in the state. He just knew she was shivering, and he was a father who knew how to take care of people. Sunlight filtered through the grease-stained blinds of the kitchen window, hitting Caleb squarely in the eyes. He groaned, stiff from sleeping on the lumpy downstairs sofa. Then the smell hit him. Coffee. Rich, fresh coffee. Not the instant stuff he usually drank. Panic spiked in his chest. Sophie. He bolted upright, memories of the crash flooding back. He rushed up the narrow wooden stairs to the living area. He froze in the doorway. Standing in his small, cluttered kitchen was the woman. The mud and blood had been washed away. Her hair, dark and sleek, fell over her shoulders in soft waves. But that wasn't what stopped Caleb's heart. She was wearing his shirt. It was an old, red and black flannel button-down, frayed at the cuffs. On him, it was a work shirt. On her, it looked like a fashion statement. It swallowed her frame, reaching down to her mid-thighs. She was barefoot, standing on his worn linoleum, holding a mug with both hands. She looked up, her eyes dark and piercing. There was no fear in them, only a calculation. "You're awake," she said. Her voice was cool, composed. It didn't match the setting. "My shirt," Caleb stammered, his brain still catching up. She glanced down. "My dress was ruined. I hope you don't mind. I found this in the laundry basket. It was clean." "Yeah, it's fine." Caleb rubbed the back of his neck. "How do you feel?" "You were in shock last night." She took a sip of the coffee. "I remember the crash. I remember the fire. And I remember you pulling me out." She set the mug down. "I'm Elena." Elena Sterling. The name landed in the room like a heavy stone. Elena Sterling, CEO of Sterling Dynamics. The woman who was on the cover of Forbes last month. The woman whose company was currently gentrifying half the city. "Caleb," he said simply. "Caleb Miller." "Well, Caleb Miller," she said, reaching for a sleek leather purse that sat on his battered kitchen table, miraculously salvaged from the wreck. You saved my life. I just did what anyone would do. No, she corrected him sharply. 3 cars passed me before you stopped. I counted. Before Caleb could respond, the door to the small second bedroom creaked open. Sophie shuffled out, clutching a worn teddy bear named Mr. Fluff. Her hair was a bird's nest of tangles. Daddy, she rubbed her eyes, blinking against the light. Who is the lady? Caleb moved instantly, crossing the room to scoop Sophie up. This was his instinct, protect the cub. Hey, Peanut. This is a friend. She had some car trouble last night. Elena watched the interaction, her expression softening imperceptibly. She wasn't used to children. In her world, children were scheduled appointments or photo ops. But seeing this large, rough-looking man soften instantly into a gentle giant intrigued her. Hi, Elena said, crouching down slightly, though keeping her distance. I'm Elena. I like your bear. Sophie hid her face in Caleb's neck. He's old. Daddy says we can't afford a new one yet. Caleb winced. The innocence of poverty. Go get dressed. Sophomore Mrs. Gable is taking you to school today. Once Sophie scurried off, the air in the kitchen shifted. The warmth evaporated, replaced by business. Elena pulled a checkbook from her purse. The leather creaked, the sound of money. I don't like debts, Caleb, she said, clicking a gold pin. You saved me. You housed me. You gave me flannel. She gestured to the shirt. I want to compensate you. Caleb watched her write. She tore the check out and slid it across the table. He didn't look at the number. He looked at her hands. Manicured, perfect, shaking slightly. Take it back, Caleb said. His voice was low, devoid of anger, but heavy with pride. Elena blinked. Excuse me. I said take it back. I didn't pull you out of that fire for a paycheck. And I didn't give you my bed so I could charge you rent. It's $10,000, Elena said, her tone clipping. I saw your truck outside. I saw the eviction notice on the counter by the mail. Don't be an idiot. Caleb's jaw tightened. She had seen the notice. The red stamp from Mr. Henderson, giving him 30 days to pay back rent or get out. I might be broke, Miss Sterling, Caleb said, stepping closer. He towered over her, but he made sure not to be threatening. But I'm not a service you can hire. You were a human being in trouble. I helped. That's how it works down here. We help each other because nobody else will. Everyone has a price, Elena challenged, though her voice wavered. Not me, Caleb said. You want to pay me back. Say thank you. That's enough. For the first time in her professional life, Elena Sterling was speechless. She looked at the check, then at the man in the grease-stained t-shirt. He had nothing, yet he was refusing a lifeline. Fine, she snapped, snatching the check back. She felt foolish, and she hated feeling foolish. Thank you. You're welcome. She moved to the door, grabbing her ruined dress. She paused with her hand on the knob. Can I at least call a car? Phone lines are down from the storm, Caleb said. I'll drive you. The drive to the city was silent. Caleb's truck rattled and groaned over every pothole. Elena sat in the passenger seat, still wearing his flannel shirt over her leggings, looking like a queen in exile. When they arrived at the Sterling Tower, a monolith of glass and steel piercing the sky, the valet looked at Caleb's truck with open disgust. Elena opened the door. Wait here. I have to get to work, Miss Sterling. Just wait. She disappeared inside. 5 minutes later, she returned. She wasn't wearing the flannel anymore. She had changed into a blazer and slacks with frightening speed. But she held the flannel shirt in her hands. I had my assistant clean it, she lied. There wasn't time. She just wanted to give it back with dignity. Caleb. He rolled down the window. You're a stubborn man, she said. And you're a difficult woman, he replied, a small smirk playing on his lips. She almost smiled. Almost. Goodbye, Caleb. He watched her walk away, the click-clack of her heels echoing like gunshots. He put the truck in gear and drove back to his reality. His reality was grim. When he got back to the shop, Miller's Auto, Mr. Henderson was waiting. Henderson was a short, sweating man who owned the block and squeezed his tenants for every dime. Miller. Henderson barked, slapping the hood of a sedan Caleb was supposed to be fixing. Where's my money? I'll have it next week, Gary. I promise. I got 2 transmission jobs coming in. You said that last month, Henderson sneered. He looked around his shop. It was clean, organized, but old. I got an offer for this lot. Developers. They want to put up condos. If you don't have the $3,000 by Friday, you're out. And take that brat of yours with you. Caleb's hands curled into fists at his sides. He swallowed the rage. He couldn't hit Henderson. He couldn't go to jail. He had Sophie. Friday, Caleb said through gritted teeth. Friday, Henderson spat, wiping his nose. That night, Caleb sat at the kitchen table, counting crumpled bills. 100. 200. He was short. He was so short it was laughable. Sophie was asleep in the next room. He looked at the flannel shirt Elena had returned. It smelled like her expensive perfume and rain. He pushed it aside. Smells didn't pay rent. 2 days later, Caleb was under a Honda Civic when his phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again and again. He slid out, wiping his hands on a rag. Miller's Auto. Is this the man who saved Elena Sterling? A reporter's voice. Fast, aggressive. Caleb hung up. The phone rang again. He unplugged the landline, but he couldn't unplug the world. By noon, news vans were parked outside his shop. Elena had given a press conference. She hadn't named him, but she had described the location. In a small town, that was enough. Tech mogul saved by mystery mechanic, the cheering on the 6 p.m. news read. Caleb watched the TV in the waiting room, horrified. There was Elena standing at a podium, looking impeccable. "I'm alive today because of the bravery of a stranger," she was saying to the cameras. "A man who asked for nothing. A man who reminded me that honor still exists." Caleb put his head in his hands. He didn't want honor. He wanted $3,000. The publicity brought customers, but it brought the wrong kind. People came to GOP to take selfies with a hero mechanic, but nobody wanted their oil changed. It was a circus. Then she showed up. It was Friday morning. The deadline. A black limousine pulled up right as Mr. Henderson was screaming at Caleb in the forecourt. "Get your junk out." Henderson was yelling, throwing a box of Caleb's tools onto the pavement. "Time's up, Miller." "I'm changing the locks." Sophie was sitting on a tire nearby, crying silently, clutching Mr. Fluff. Caleb was pleading, his pride shattered. "Gary, please. I have half the money. Just give me another week. For the girl's sake. Not my problem." The rear door of the limo opened. Elena Sterling stepped out. She wasn't wearing flannel this time. She was wearing a tailored white suit that looked like it could cut glass. She wore sunglasses that hid her eyes, but her posture screamed authority. The crowd of onlookers went silent. Henderson froze, his mouth hanging open. Elena walked past the cameras, past the onlookers, straight to Caleb. She looked at the tools on the ground. She looked at Sophie crying. Finally, she looked at Henderson. "Who are you?" Elena asked, her voice quiet but terrifying. I'm the landlord. Gary Henderson." "Who are you?" "I'm the woman whose car this man fixed," she said metaphorically. She took off her sunglasses. "And I'm the woman who is buying this building." Henderson blinked. "What?" "This lot," Elena said, turning to her assistant who had appeared silently with a tablet. "Block 4, Lot 12. Valued at $450,000. I'll give you $600,000. Cash. Today." Henderson's eyes bulged. 600. "On one condition," Elena said. "You apologize to Mr. Miller. And you apologize to his daughter. Then you leave, and you never step foot on this property again." Henderson looked at the checkbook she had already produced. Greed won over pride instantly. He mumbled a sorry to Caleb, nodded at Sophie, and practically ran to sign the papers the assistant held out. Caleb stood there, paralyzed. The humiliation of the eviction was gone, replaced by a different kind of burning shame. When Henderson was gone, Elena turned to Caleb, a triumphant smile on her lips. Problem solved. Caleb didn't smile. His face was like granite. "Come inside," he said. Inside the small office, away from the cameras, Caleb exploded. "Who gave you the right?" he shouted. It was the first time he had raised his voice at her. Elena was taken aback. "I saved you." He was throwing you out on the street. I am a man, Elena. I am a father. Caleb paced the small room, grease on his hands staining the air with the scent of labor. I don't need a savior in a white suit to swoop in and buy my life. What am I supposed to do now? Be your tenant? Be your charity case? I was trying to help. Elena yelled back, her composure cracking. Why is it so hard for you to accept help? Is your ego that fragile? It's not about ego. It's about dignity. Caleb slammed his hand on the desk. You think you can fix everything with a check? You broke my window? Write a check. Save your life? Write a check. My landlord is a jerk. Buy the building. You don't treat people like people, Elena. You treat them like assets and liabilities. Elena went still. The accusation hit a nerve she didn't know she had. I didn't want you to be homeless, she whispered. I would have figured it out, Caleb said, his voice breaking. I always figure it out, because that's what I do. But now I'm just the guy the rich lady bought. He looked out the window at Sophie, who was wiping her eyes. You own the building now, Caleb said quietly. Fine. What's the rent? Caleb stopped. What's the rent, Miss Sterling? Because I pay my way. Elena stared at him. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the terror of failing his daughter masked by a shield of stubborn pride. And for the first time, she realized that her money was a weapon she had wielded carelessly. We can discuss rent later, she said softly. But I'm not evicting you. She walked out. She felt smaller than she had in years. A week passed. Elena didn't call. Caleb focused on work. He fixed cars with a ferocity that scared his customers. He was trying to prove to himself, to the world, that he was independent. But he couldn't escape her. The deed to the building was transferred to a holding company, but the instructions were clear. Rent is $1 per month. Caleb tore up the notice and wrote a check for the market rate, $1,500. He mailed it to Sterling Tower. 3 days later, he found Elena sitting on the hood of his truck after hours. She was wearing jeans and a sweater. No entourage, no limo. You returned my rent check, she said. You set the price too low, he replied, wiping his hands. Can we stop fighting? She asked. She looked tired. The invincible CEO veneer was cracking. I want to show you something. I have to make dinner for Sophie. Bring her. Caleb hesitated, then nodded. She drove them not to a fancy restaurant, but to a run-down neighborhood on the south side of the city. It was worse than where Caleb lived. Boarded-up windows, overgrown lots. She stopped in front of a condemned apartment complex. I grew up in Unit 4B, Elena said, staring at the broken windows. Caleb looked at her, surprised. You? My mom was a waitress. My dad wasn't around. We got evicted when I was 12. We lived in a car for 6 months. She turned to Caleb. I didn't buy your building to show off, Caleb. I bought it because when I saw Henderson throwing your tools, I saw my landlord throwing my mom's clothes in the garbage. I saw myself in Sophie. Sophie, sitting in the back seat, leaned forward. Did you have a teddy bear? Elena smiled, sad, genuine smile. I did. A rabbit. I lost him during the move. Caleb felt the wall around his heart crumble. He had judged her just as she had judged him. He thought she was born with a silver spoon. In reality, she had forged her armor out of necessity. I'm sorry I yelled, Caleb said. I'm sorry I tried to buy your dignity, Elena replied. So, Caleb looked at the building. What happens now? Now, Elena said, looking at him with an intensity that made his breath catch. Now we eat burgers. I know a place. Over the next few months, the dynamic shifted. It wasn't a romance, not yet. It was a partnership. Elena stopped trying to pay Caleb. Instead, she asked for his help. She wanted to start a foundation, a program to help single parents get vocational training. She knew business, but she didn't know the reality of the struggle. She needed a consultant. I don't wear suits, Caleb warned when she asked him to speak at the launch gala. I'll buy you one, she teased. Elena, fine, rent one. But please, Caleb, you're the heart of this. The night of the gala, Caleb stood in front of a mirror in the back of the shop. He looked at himself in the rented tuxedo. He looked ridiculous, he thought. You look like James Bond, Sophie squealed, twirling in her own thrift store party dress. When they arrived at the Sterling Tower ballroom, The room went quiet. The gossip columns had been speculating about the mechanic and the queen for months. Caleb walked through the crowd, holding Sophie's hand. He felt the judgment, the sneers of the rich men who wondered why this grease monkey was here. Elena was on stage. She saw him enter, and her face lit up. It wasn't the professional smile she gave the board members. It was real. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elena said into the microphone, "we talk about bootstraps and hard work. But the system is broken. I know because I survived it. And I know someone who fights it every day with more integrity than anyone in this room." She gestured to Caleb. "Please welcome the co-founder of the Sterling Miller Initiative, Caleb Miller." Applause rippled. It was polite, tepid. Caleb walked up the stairs. He stood at the podium. He didn't have speech cards. "I'm not a businessman," Caleb started, his voice rough but steady. "I fix cars. If your transmission blows, I'm the guy you call. And usually, when you call me, you're having a bad day." A few chuckles. "Being a single dad is like driving a car with 3 wheels. You're just trying to keep it on the road, praying the lug nuts hold." Elena. Ms. Sterling, she saw that. She didn't just throw money at the problem. She asked me what was broken, and she helped me build a tool to fix it. This foundation isn't charity. It's a spare tire. It's a jack. It's a chance to get back on the road. He looked at Sophie in the front row, beaming. Then he looked at Elena. "And I'm proud to be a part of it." The applause this time was thunderous. Real. As Caleb walked off stage, a man blocked his path. It was a rival developer, a man who had sneered at Caleb earlier. "Good speech," the man said, offering a hand. "I need a mechanic I can trust. Can I get your card?" Caleb smiled. "I'm in the book." Miller's Auto. The months turned into a year. The foundation was a success. Caleb's shop was thriving, not because of charity, but because the exposure proved he was the best mechanic in the city. He hired 2 assistants. He paid off his debts. But something was unresolved. Elena came to the shop every Tuesday, ostensibly for foundation updates, but really to watch Sophie do her homework and to drink stale coffee with Caleb. One rainy Tuesday, the anniversary of the crash, she didn't come. Instead, a courier arrived with a letter. Caleb wiped his hands and opened it. "Hell, I'm writing this because I'm a coward. In the boardroom, I can't negotiate billion-dollar mergers. But facing you, I freeze. You saved my life that night, but you did more than that. You woke me up. I was sleepwalking through a life of accumulation, thinking net worth was self-worth. You showed me that a flannel shirt can be warmer than mink. You showed me that a father's love is the strongest force on earth. I'm in love with you, Caleb. I have been since you refused my money. I know we are different. I know people think we don't make sense. The CEO and the mechanic. But I don't care about the optics. I care about how I feel when I'm sitting in your kitchen. I'm leaving for a conference in London tonight. If you think this is crazy, throw this letter away. I'll understand. We can go back to being partners. But if you think there's a chance, don't let me get on that plane. Elena. Caleb read it twice. His heart hammered against his ribs like a piston in a red-lined engine. He looked at the clock. 6 p.m. Her flight was at 8 o'clock. "Sophie," he yelled. Sophie ran in from the office. "Yeah, Dad. Get your shoes. We're going for a ride." "Where?" "To get the girl." It was a cliché. Caleb knew it was a cliché. Racing to the airport in the rain. But life didn't care about tropes. Traffic was gridlocked on the I-5. Caleb slammed the steering wheel. "Dad, you said bad words," Sophie piped up from the back. "Sorry, Peanut. This is an emergency." "Is Elena leaving?" "Not if I can help it." He looked at the breakdown lane. Illegal. Dangerous. He pulled the truck into the breakdown lane and floored it. The old Ford roared. He passed Lamborghinis and Teslas stuck in traffic. They skidded to a halt at the international terminal. Caleb grabbed Sophie and ran. He didn't have a ticket. He couldn't get past security. He stood at the TSA barrier, scanning the crowd. He saw the departure board. British Airways, Flight 294 boarding. "Elena," he shouted. People turned. Security guards started walking toward him. Elena Sterling. He saw her. She was near the front of the first-class line, handing her boarding pass to the attendant. She paused. She turned. Across the sea of travelers, their eyes locked. She dropped her boarding pass. She ducked under the rope and ran back toward security. "Ma'am, you can't," the agent started. Elena ignored him. She reached the glass partition separating the secure zone from the check-in area. Caleb was on the other side. "You read it," she said, breathless. "I read it," Caleb said, ignoring the security guard putting a hand on his shoulder. "And you're wrong." Elena's face fell. "Oh, you're not a coward," Caleb said, pressing his grease-stained hand against the glass. "And we're not different. We're just two people who needed fixing." He looked at the guard. "Give me 10 seconds, or I'm going to start taking apart the conveyor belt." The guard hesitated. "Elena," Caleb said, "don't go to London. Come home. The shop is quiet without you. And Sophie misses you." "And you?" she asked, tears welling in her eyes. "Do you miss me?" "I miss you before you even leave," Caleb said. "I love you, Elena. Come home." Elena turned to the TSA agent. "I'm not flying today." 6 months later. The wedding wasn't at the plaza. It wasn't at the Sterling estate. It was in the backyard of the house behind the shop, the building Caleb now owned, free and clear. He had insisted on paying Elena back every cent, and she had finally let him. It was a small affair. Mechanics in ill-fitting suits stood next to board members in Italian silk. Mr. Henderson was not invited. Sophie was the flower girl. She took her job very seriously, dumping entire handfuls of petals onto the guests. When the officiant asked for the vows, Elena went first. "I used to measure value in assets," she said, holding Caleb's rough hands in hers. "Now I measure it in oil changes, school drop-offs, and late-night coffees. You saved me from the wreck, Caleb. But mostly, you saved me from being alone." Caleb cleared his throat. He wasn't a poet. "My life has always been about fixing things," he said. "But you didn't need fixing. You just needed a jump start. You're the best thing that ever crashed into my life. I promise to always be your safety net. I promise to always drive you home." They kissed. It wasn't polite. It was passionate, deep, and full of a promise of a future that belonged to them both. As the party went on into the night, string lights glowing against the rusty corrugated metal of the shop, Caleb stood back and watched. He saw his daughter dancing on the feet of a billionaire. He saw his mechanic buddies laughing with corporate lawyers. He felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Elena. She had swapped her heels for sneakers, but she was still wearing the white wedding dress. "What are you thinking?" she asked. Caleb looked at the shop sign. Miller Sterling Auto Foundation. "I'm thinking," Caleb said, wrapping his arm around her waist, pulling her close, "that I'm the richest man in the world." Elena rested her head on his shoulder, smelling the faint scent of rain and engine oil, the scent of home. "Yes," she whispered. "You are." The rain started to fall again, soft and gentle this time, washing away the old dirt, leaving everything clean and new.